And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 231st edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it's our 735th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of October 14th, 2021. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred last Friday at Big Ten Media Day when Rob Finney stepped off the podium and answered my off-the-cuff question about his white suit. When asked if the suit was, quote, Lafayette style in reference to his hometown, Rob replied, "No, it's Rob style." What a great response. It was even a clip on the Big Ten Network Twitter feed. Well, what we can take from that and what we can hope for is that it's a sign of his increased confidence, and that'll help Rob reaching his potential and helping the Hoosiers win. So this banner moment was presented to you in Rob style. Okay, let me introduce to you my esteemed co-hosts for tonight. Jared, Ryan, Andy are all off getting their beauty rest in advance of the season starting. And since I don't have any beauty, they assigned me to the show tonight. So, but I'm here with one of our favorite reoccurring guest hosts who is always up for regaling us and you with tales from Indiana's storied history. He runs one of the best Twitter accounts anywhere. He is Chris Williams, a.k.a. IUArtifacts. Chris, what is your opening thought on this IU offseason as it comes to a close with our start on November 9th?
Well, first of all, I just want to comment that it's always good to have the two Bald brothers together, because
that's
I think
right.
That just kind of, we have that great look going, and everybody is jealous of those people who have the hair. So I just want to address that. But I just think the optimism of the season, the attitude of the players, I know it's been run into the ground about. It seems like the fog's lifted with this team, but if you sense that the players are more comfortable in their conversations and the way they're talking about things, and I love hearing what Trace has to say about his meeting with Woodson, where he basically explained to him what he couldn't do, and he took that to heart, and that's why he's here. That to me says a lot about what we're hoping the season will be. I think for the traditionalists who wanted an IU guy, as it's been said multiple times, again, this is nothing new, but it's just got a different feel, going into the season. I think we all always have a sense of optimism with a new coach, whether it was, dare I say, Kelvin Sampson or Tom Crean or Archie. There is something different about this, and I think a lot of it is just because of the fact that we brought a player home. We brought a former player back to Bloomington, and we're just ready for the season to start, and I'm ready to be there on the first night.
You live in Bloomington. Is there a local vibe that's a little different since Coach Woodson has been in town? Do you sense the town feeling a little different? Obviously, we're on the podcast, and the chat mob and our listeners feel a certain way. But what's the feeling you get in the town?
Well, let me give you an example of just the difference. We had some family in town early August, and a friend of mine in athletics took us all on a tour of Assembly Hall, and we went in and they were repainting the floor. And we went into the arena, and then we took the tunnel from Assembly Hall to Cook Hall, and they were practicing, and we walked by and we stayed quiet. And Woodson was at center court of the practice facility and took the time, unprovoked of any kind, to come out and say hi to us, asked us how we were, asked us what, took a genuine interest in us. And I know that not every coach has to do that to be a successful coach, but the fact that he took his time, I know this is from everybody I've talked to that knows him, so that's who he is. He's a very personable guy. The fact that you have a guy that took his time to talk to a bunch of nobodies, like regular people, I don't know, but that to me means a lot. And the fact that you can sense that, when you drive down 17th Street, there's because I drive 17th Street all the time, right by Assembly Hall. There's a feeling that's different. There's just like this aura around the facility that's different. And when you run into players on campus, or if you run into players in town, they're always around. There's just a different attitude. There's an edge about them. There's a chip on their shoulder. There's a sense of out to do something different than this year. And, when we hear about these guys that say, they want to bring Indiana basketball back, these players, I don't know. And maybe I'm just the internal optimist. We have to be of late with IU basketball, but there's a different tone to it. And I think that even without the struggles that are going on right now with football, there was still that same sense of anticipation, more so than I think when Archie came here in 2018. So,
and we're 3.5 weeks away from seeing, the first game under Coach Woodson, and I'm very excited about that. But here's what we're going to cover this week here on Assembly Call Radio. We're going to finish up segment 1. We're going to reflect on Big Ten Media Day. I was fortunate to be able to go from our school thing. Delphi Bracketology was credentialed. And we'll talk about some Hoosier headlines. In segment 2, Chris is going to talk a little Mike Woodson, and he collects stuff, and he has a few things from the Mike Woodson era to show us and talk, and that's always interesting. And then, of course, in the third segment, we'll answer your question. All of that coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. Don't forget to join our private IU basketball discussion community at assemblycall.com/community. As we announced last week, Tony Adragna's IU Film Room is now a premium part of our community. If you join before the end of the day, Friday, you can still get the early bird price on all of Tony's film analysis and breakdowns, plus everything else we have going on in there. That is assemblycall.com/community. Okay, here's some headlines. Again, I enjoyed the media day, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I felt went down at media day as far as the Big Ten, and a little bit about the IU media, the representatives from IU. Dick Vitale names Trace Jackson Davis a preseason first-team All-American. Birthdays out to Rob Finnessy and Xavier Johnson. It was announced that Indiana will play Syracuse at 7:30 on ESPN or ESPN2 on the Tuesday of the Big Ten ACC Challenge. And Noah Clowney will announce his college decision on October 31st. And it's believed that he still has an official visit to Alabama because that was rescheduled. And also a shout out to Anthony Leo. If you saw his little media commercial thing on Twitter, it's worth the search to go find. It was well done, Anthony. NIL has brought some creativity to the players. So, Chris, any of those headlines jump out that you want to talk about briefly before I share a little bit of the Big Ten stuff that I witnessed last week?
I think just the NIL stuff is just such, I saw that it kind of had that Sports Center commercial-esque type of situation there. And I just think I like the freedom and flexibility that the players have to embrace that opportunity. The fact that for the first time ever, the floating head posters are going to provide compensation for the players. You just think about those, go back to 1981-82 season continuously. How many people have those still, and how they were never compensated for that. It was a free for all. It was a freebie, and every single business in Bloomington and Southern Indiana had their advertisement on it. I think that, and just the fact that, these players can really pick and choose what they want to do to attach their name to, their likeness, to visit a kid's birthday party, to go to an event. I think there's just something so different about it. It's so unique. And I think for a lot of people, it's still an adjustment. But I think, following these guys on Twitter and seeing what the different opportunities they have it's such a cool thing because, it's going to forever change the game, as has been discussed a lot. But I think it's just unique to see what these guys are able to kind of do and what they're going to get hooked up with in terms of businesses. And there's a couple of these guys that are doing exclusive interviews with people. There's a guy from Bloomington, I know, Sean Cavanaugh, that's doing Cavanaugh's Corner with a lot of the players. So that's just something really cool and something interesting to see that I think it'll be, for some of these guys, what it'll continue to be during the season is pretty neat.
And, if Rob creates another T-shirt with him in his white suit and his red shoes and calls it Rob style underneath, I'm going to ask him, for a little bit of a cut for setting him up on that. But Media Day, it was the first time I've been to a Big Ten Media Day. It was in Bankers Life or Gainbridge, whatever center it is now, or Gainwell. It'd always be Conseco to me, but it was nice. And the morning sessions are televised on TV. And it's just 10 minutes, and you get some decent comments from each coach there, and you get the gist of the programs. But what I liked were the breakout sessions, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that in other media sites, some of the videotapes from those interviews. And it was just nice to spend a little bit time with Coach Woodson and then go over and jump over to the players as well. And, it's just – I loved Coach Woodson's he's just very candid, he uses some colorful language that's not really colorful, but I won't repeat it here on the podcast tonight. We'll wait till he gets quoted. But he talked about showing Trace Jackson Davis the stuff that he couldn't do, and that just that's been out before, so that's not news breaking or breaking news, but it just, again, listening to him talk is that he's going to be a straight, honest guy, and he's going to tell you when you do things right, and he's going to point out when you do things wrong, but it really comes across that he cares. And I think that's very valuable in coaching. The days of just being really tough and screaming and yelling and having the players figure out if you care, I think has passed. And Coach Woodson has some of the best of the past and also some of the future things. So there was a lot of takeaways, specific things that we had heard before about point guard play and all of that stuff. But again, you see it in a different way when you're covering it as media. When I went over to the players, Chris, it was just, they're all excited to start competing and beating some people. They mentioned Purdue, that it's really on their mind to beat Purdue. So that has to be emphasized in practice and things all the time as part of what they're trying to do. And then Rob just seemed a lot more confident. And I know that it's something that we've talked over and over and over again. True, and in play, that's going to be a solid thing. And it's funny because you could just see the face, and all the players that I sat in on, they don't like being there. They like the publicity, they like all that, but it's tough sitting there and answering a lot of questions, some of which they've been answered over and over again. But it was an enjoyable thing for us. It gives our Delphi bracketology some recognition. Got to introduce some myself to some media people as we start bringing students to these things too. It really helps spread that a little bit too. So the Big Ten Media Days are good, and we're getting close. Noah Clowney, I have no idea. Chris, have you heard anything about crystal balls or anything like that? I'm not a recruiting guru, so I can't tell you if it's 50-50 or what. I just would like the young man to come to IU if he so selects.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. A lot of one of those things that's kind of like a diamond, not a diamond in the rough. He's proven himself on the court, but has so much potential if he harnesses athleticism with other parts of his game. But I think IU's where they, they're as good as they can be in that position, and who they're going up against, I feel good about. I just want to go back to one thing you mentioned about the Big Ten Media Day. The one thing that's refreshing to hear from Woodson is that he's actually going to answer questions with words and processes. He's not going to beat around the bush on answers. He's not going to, passively answer to the point where we've seen before in the past. But the one thing that, and again, we've seen this, Crean tried to emphasize this as well, but he's the first guy in a really long time that truly understands what it means to play Indiana basketball. He talks about the banners. I don't know if people have seen, they put the banners in the practice facility now. They're hanging up there so the players can see that. And I know that people get bent out of shape talking about the banners, especially non-IU people, because they say, well, you haven't won anything since 87. Well, that maybe is the motivator that he wants to instill, is that, look, I want to see Indiana basketball return to its glory days. And as a former player, I have as much insight on this as anybody, and as much to gain and lose on this situation as anybody. So, it's a little bit different hearing it from a guy like Tom Crean versus a guy like Mike Woodson, who's one of the best players in the history of the program. So that, to me, and to your point where he calls Rob Phinisee a treat, I thought that was good. I like the fact that he has confidence in Rob and he wants Rob to shoot the ball, and he admits that he's going to need guys like Rob to shoot and be able to shoot, so there's not that collapsing defense on Trace every single time, and Trace can't do it all, as you mentioned too. So, I mean, but he says what we want to hear, and he's not going to pull things back or, beat around the bush. He's going to be very straight with you, as you said, and very candid. And I think that's a refreshing thing to hear from our head coach.
I'm interested to get your opinion on this. I've said several times on the show, and I believe this. I don't think the job's too big for Coach Woodson. I think at points in the last few coaching regimes, the fact that they were coaching at Indiana got to Archie Miller, got to Tom Crean, and
Mike
those
Davis.
guys. Yeah, Mike Davis. They know basketball. They're good X and O guys and drill guys and all of that stuff. But a job can be too big, meaning the pressure can give. And I just think Coach Woodson, that's not too big. Would you agree with that, or is there something else that allows him to be so refreshing and forward in his conversation?
I think first of all, Scott Dolson is a smart guy. Scott Dolson understands the importance of the program, and from a fan standpoint, from a monetary standpoint, as a guy who's headed the varsity club and understands the importance of money for the program and for the university. But I think if you're a guy like Mike Woodson and you make it very clear you're actively interested in the job and you're not having somebody have to come to you for that, that makes a big difference. And if you put the right people around him that they have with Thad Mata, Dane Fife, Kenya Hunter, I can't remember our other assistants.
Coach Yap.
Yeah. You put the right guys around him, you let him do what he does best, and he works with the players, develops the players. He understands the game X and O's wise. And again, I think he's going to be a guy that, and there's always this concern about never coaching in the NBA or never coaching in college. And I don't need him to be a Juwan Howard. I don't want him to be a Juwan Howard. I want him to be a Mike Woodson. I want him to be the guy that is bringing IU basketball to the point where everybody's excited going to every game. The fans are in the stands. It's packed. And there's a genuine excitement about talking about Indiana basketball, not, oh my gosh, we lost 12-13. Oh my gosh, we can't shoot threes. Oh my gosh, we're committing 27 turnovers a game. I don't think the stage is going to be too big for him, because I think that he has the mentality to go with it. He has the maturity, he has the personality, and he has the composure. I think that's the biggest thing. And the thing I like about him is he's not going to put up with any crap, and he's going to go out there and he's going to put the best 5 players on the floor that are going to be there to win games. And if it's the 5 that we expect or 5 others, I don't care. I just want to see Indiana basketball win games.
You bring up Juwan Howard, and I agree with you. He doesn't have to be a Juwan Howard, but what Juwan Howard impressed me at media days, because his passion for his school. And then he surrounded himself with a good staff. Phil Martelli's on the staff. And I think that's some of the reason. I left there, as a fan, I don't want to like anyone else in the Big Ten. As a basketball coach, I respect every coach in the Big Ten. And as a member of Assembly Call, there's people I don't want to root for. But I came out of there with a lot of respect for Juwan Howard, because he went to school and played and wants to bring Michigan back to those days. And that's similar to what Coach Woodson and is trying to do here in Indiana. And then the last thing I'd like to just share is, wow, the Big Ten has a lot of good coaches. And just listening to the talk, I had a chance to sit with Coach Peichel from Rutgers. It was just myself and one other member of the media, and just had a conversation about how tough it is to rebuild in the Big Ten and what he has to do and how he tries to keep, the momentum going, given the fact that they're not Michigan, they're not Indiana. And there's a guy that really, he said he thrives on the rebuilds, but he goes, at some point you want to get to the top. And you didn't, I never knew that about Coach Peichel until I sat down and had a conversation with him. So the Big Ten is so well coached.
We're spoiled. We are spoiled.
And it's just something to remember. Hopefully we beat all those good coaches, but if you don't, there's a lot of good coaches. Now, I do have a list that's the bottom 3, Greg Gard, Mark Turgeon, and Fran McCaffrey. I don't want to talk about them much anymore, but the rest were very impressive. Micah Shrewsbury was the new coach at Penn State, was impressive. And man, these guys know what they're doing. It comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes sometimes that make a difference. But
I'll tell you this: my brother-in-law is a Division I assistant coach at Alabama for women's, and he I always ask him. I said, "Who's the guy you would want to coach for?" And he doesn't even skip a beat, and he says Matt Painter. So
yep.
he doesn't even skip a beat, doesn't even hesitate, and says Matt Painter. And I of course he knows I'm an IU fan. He's my sister grew up in Bloomington, all that. But he goes, you just don't understand. And I said, I don't. I'm coaching fourth grade basketball here in Bloomington at like a rec place. I don't understand what it means to be a high state coach. And he says, you just don't understand. I said, fair enough. Doesn't mean I have to agree with you, but he echoes a lot of the same things I hear about the X's and O's and the understanding of a program from that standpoint. And like I said, he doesn't even hesitate one iota in saying Matt Painter.
Yeah, I'll reserve my Matt Painter talk for in between segments. But I agree with your brother-in-law, and we'll get into it in the middle of the segments. But coming up on Assembly Call Radio, it's time for Chris to show us some of his collection. Chris does a great job collecting IU memorabilia, and we'll see it this week. A lot of Mike Woodson stuff. So stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Yeah, I'll probably get vilified for this in the chat mob, so I'm ready for it. But Matt Painter's the best coach in the Big Ten. He's past Tom Izzo, in my opinion.
That's
a basketball coach talking. There's a chance that I might be able to go watch practice. And I'm not going as a Assembly Call member. I'm going as a high school basketball coach to pick up something. And just the way he talks and does things, he was really impressive at media days.
Yeah. And, the thing that always comes back to me with him, not as a coaching standpoint, is just it's the irony of how much he wanted to play at Indiana and that whole thing. And I it's so funny. And anyways, but it's like to your point about the coaches. I think we have our coaches that we hate the most and all that kind of stuff. And I'm right with you on McCaffrey and guard and all that kind of stuff. But top to bottom, there's a reason why the Big Ten is the strongest basketball conference in the country. I mean, we could be Pac-12 fans and probably have a team that never finishes out of the cellar. You'd be an Oregon State that every once in a while has like a fluke season, but we're pretty spoiled. So
I just like coaches, and I know everyone in the chat mob. We'll get back to Indiana stuff here shortly, but Underwood was impressive. Pico, I had a good conversation with. Chris Collins is a great listen to.
Do you think he's on the hot seat?
Yeah, unfortunately, I really every coach gets fired. There's two types of coaches, those who have been fired and those who are about to be fired. I mean,
right.
It's just part of the business. It doesn't hurt. It hurts a little bit. And then then you get to go do stuff like this instead of coaching a basketball program. So I'm afraid he is, but like I said, I only had 3 coaches there. The new guy at Minnesota is just a new guy. And I don't know, but I got a feel that he's going to try to do as good a job as he can. But so the other
coming out of the gate saying what people want to hear anyway, too.
Oh yeah, and that's I put out that tweet. Things you won't hear. We had a horrible summer. Our team chemistry's bad. I'm not excited about coaching. It's all the same stuff at media day. You don't get any kind of. But the thing that I like is as a coach, you can read between the lines a little bit of how they sugarcoat it, because they're not going to come out and say they're going to be great and then build expectations for being a top 3 and end up 13th in the Big Ten. There's going to be a little bit of honesty. Fran was talking about it. Who was it? Even Ohio State was talking about how their guards, they got to find out their guards. So, they're a little bit, they can't be too rosy, because then when you lose, But anyway, so
Right.
All right. We'll just make sure that we, because of the podcast, we describe the stuff that you're showing.
Sure.
Here
I'll
in the
go into
second segment.
detail.
Yep.
Yep.
And I know you've done this before, so just we'll get going, and I'll talk a little bit about.
Yeah. Do we want to intro when we get to him? Do we want to intro like we kind of want to weave his story at IU around stuff, or how do you want to do that?
We can do that, or I'll just turn this loose. I'm going to talk a little bit about you, and then you can go whatever direction you want in whatever order
Okay.
you want.
Sounds good.
So, okay. Very, very good. All right, here we go.
Hi, this is AJ Moye. What's the only thing better than upsetting Duke in the Sweet 16? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach for the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the assembly call. How do you keep up with the fire hose of information that comes out almost every day about IU basketball? It's crazy during off-season, and it's even crazier during the season. Well, we've got your back. We send out a free weekly email newsletter on Sunday mornings. It rounds up the most important and interesting IU basketball stories from the previous week to keep you up to date on your Hoosiers. Over 8,000 of your fellow IU fans are on the list, and we want you to be there too. Go to join.assemblycall.com to subscribe for free now. That's join.assemblycall.com. You can also text IU to 66866. That's IU to 66866. Okay, I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and I'm with Chris Williams, also known as IUArtifacts, a great collector of IU memorabilia and just one of the best people I've ever met in Bloomington and associated with Indiana University. Chris has reached out to me several years ago. I think we met via Twitter and have developed a friendship, and his generosity of inviting me to his house and sharing some of the things that I had and some of the things that he's had. They don't get any better than Chris. And I just love to see his collection. He's moved into a new home, and he's got a nice place to show his collection. I have not been there yet doing that. Chris, thanks for joining us this week as the season gets closer to talk about some of the things that you've collected and mostly some of the things from Coach Woodson that are in your collection. So how would you well, I'll just turn it over to you, and you can start, and then I'll ask some questions as it pops up.
Okay, sounds good. So obviously Woodson's story, Indianapolis kid from Broad Ripple High School, arrives in Bloomington in the fall of '76. So he's on that first team that comes in after the '76 national title team. The whole team is gone except Kent Benson. Benson's back for his senior year. And it's kind of a rebuilding season because you lose, your captain, your floor commander, and your guy, Coach Quinn Buckner. You lose Scott May, National Player of the Year, among others. And it's kind of a mishmash, that 76-77 team. You got a lot of talent. You got a guy like Jim Wisman who comes back, who is a veteran player, is not nearly the leader that Buckner's going to be. But the 76-77 season was very much that, a rebuilding year. They did win their first game of the season against South Dakota, and this is the program and ticket from those first games. So this is Woodson's debut. Scores in double figures and starts. He'll start every game but two that season. That's a true testament just what kind of a talent he was. Very skinny. This was a guy that was never a really built player at IU. He used his natural athleticism and his natural shooting prowess to really make his mark at IU. And he led the team in scoring that freshman year, 18.5 points a game. And the significance of that is that we're not going to have another freshman top that until Eric Gordon in 2007. So if you think about all the players that played at IU in the late 80s, early 90s, you have Jay Edwards, you have Calbert Chaney, Alan Henderson, all those guys, they don't top that as a freshman. And even Chaney's, freshman season, which was tremendous, he doesn't top that. So that's a true testament to him. The big thing that I think everybody talks about with Woodson is that he unfortunately was in that 4-year gap between titles. He was here, and he missed titles by one single season. And we're going to talk about the 80 season a little bit, but he comes in as a freshman in 1976-77, and here we have his shorts from that season. The road shorts, very short, very small. Whoops, sorry.
Yep, there you go.
Very short, very small. He was a size 34 waist. I wish I was a size 34 waist. But these were new manufactured that season, Medalist sand knit. So brand new that season for IU. Obviously, I'm an equipment and uniform junkie, so I know that as well as I know the name of my kids. So which is kind of crazy, but IU wins that first season, which now is their 33rd straight victory. And then they lose after that. I can't even remember who they lost to. But like I said, 76-77 was, a highlighted year for Woodson. Not a great season for IU overall. And then Benson's gone. He gets drafted number 1. One of only 2 players, by the way, in Indiana history drafted number 1 overall. The other one is Coach. Do you know?
Oh, man, you stumped me.
You got to go back for this one. It's Walt Bellamy.
All right, yeah.
Walt Bellamy. Yeah. So, and then 77-78, another up.
Before you go, how do you secure those things? Did you get those things since he came back, or what have you had the program from his first game, sure, right? In Assembly Hall and ticket stub, and then you had the shorts. How did you secure those?
Sure. So programs and ticket stubs are fairly common to find. Every once in a while, I'll find somebody that has every ticket that they've got. I bought out collections of people that haven't missed a game in 35 years and kept every ticket. And I bought everything from them because I like that kind of stuff. I like to have a chronological list of all the seasons as much as I can. The shorts, IU has liquidated their stuff over the years. They've had major sales. They had sales in Mellencamp Pavilion in 2001. They had a sale in Assembly Hall in 2002 and 2003. And they just sell stuff. They need room and equipment. The equipment rooms, they liquidate stock of things. And so over the time, a lot of stuff gets out just in these sales. And nowadays, everything kind of goes to surplus. And if you're lucky, you find some stuff that's basketball related, but it's just kind of being in the right place in the right time. And a lot of these universities sell these things yearly. IU, it's more selective. And you just kind of have to wait and see when things are going to happen with that. I mean, obviously the football helmets are the big thing now. With IU, they've been selling those the last couple of years in football uniforms, but basketball is a little bit more selective, and they haven't done a lot of those big sales for a long time. So that's really how I get to that. So
very good. Now you want to go on to his sophomore year. Coach Woodson's now a sophomore. Go ahead.
I'm gonna basically gloss over the sophomore year because it's not very memorable. Double figure score again. The one thing that is indisputable about Woodson is that he was a scorer. This was a guy, and we'll talk about the senior year, that easily could have eclipsed the Big Ten and Indiana career scoring record had it not been for the injury, which we'll talk about. But let's get into 78-79. I'm going to highlight that with this beautiful trophy ball that we have here. Sorry, I keep getting the camera in there. Yep. So these are team signed basketballs that have panels painted. These were very common starting in the 70s. That we would have 2 panels highlighting a team. It's all white, has a red IU. These were done on campus in the art department on campus. This one says 78-79 Hurricane Hoosiers. The irony, obviously, and by the way, there's Coach Woodson's signature right there. So yep. Mike Woodson, is that they weren't the Hurricane Hoosiers by this time, not by any means. That's a throwback to Branch McCracken and a little bit into Lou Watson. But it's just that nostalgic name connection. But that was used into the late 70s with Knights teams, as they were called, the Hurricane Hoosiers, and just not the case. But this team, was destined for better play. Had a rocky start to the season because they had some issues, off the court issues, on a trip to Alaska, which resulted in 4 players getting kicked off the team, including Jim Roberson, who was on the 76 team. Woodson kept his spot, for being honest with Knight, about what happened on that trip. I'm not going to really go into more detail, but people can kind of find out about it. So the off the court issues and players leaving, I think there was like 7 players in those first 3 seasons after the 76 team won that transferred or got kicked off the team. So there was a lot of turnover, a lot of instability on there, but we got to turn our attention to 79-80.
And before you do that,
go ahead.
Chris,
Yes, please.
There was a great article by Seth Davis in The Athletic that documents a lot of that 78-79 season, as well as talking about Coach Woodson's return to Indiana, his connection to Coach Knight. If you have a subscription to The Athletic, free advertising here, Jared can charge me for that. But it was really well done. And it explained some of his career and then a lot of what he's done in the pros and then coming back and how important it is for him to come back and how he's incorporating Coach Knight. I think there was a comment. Did you have a chance to read that?
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my to-do list.
There was a comment where Coach Knight's been in at practice, which is really, really cool. And he ran into Miller Kopp, and Miller Kopp extended his hand to shake his hand, and Knight shook his hand, and Miller Kopp said, "Hi, I'm Miller Kopp," and Knight says, "I don't care what your name is. Can you guard?" And that just brought a smile to my face. And you know, Coach Woodson dealt with that in these first 3 years that you've talked about too. In that junior year, had to run some stairs. The story talked about running some stairs and how he was honest with the discipline issue, and he was able to stay on the team because of his honesty. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning, that it's just refreshing. The aura is just different again. And I didn't know that could ever be brought back, and it just seems that it's brought back. But I just love picturing Coach Knight and Cook Hall asking Miller Kopp if he can guard anybody. That's just music to my ears. So that explains a lot of that story on that junior year.
There's a couple of things I do want to highlight about that junior year. One more thing is Woodson's 48-point performance against Illinois cannot be overlooked. It's one of the greatest performances, especially on the road. It was at Illinois, and it was one of the highlights of that year that was not quite where they need to be. I mean, if people know, Butch Carter hits a jumper in the lane against Purdue in the NIT to win it. Kind of bittersweet, or it's kind of a poetic justice beating Purdue, but in an NIT setting. But NIT champs nonetheless, but it's high hopes because there's a certain recruit coming in from Chicago, one of the most heralded recruits really of all time, and definitely that year, in Isaiah Thomas arriving in Bloomington. And if anybody has seen that famous, I don't have it near me at the time, the famous Sports Illustrated cover that shows an Indiana jersey and there's a 1 on it, they were preseason number 1 that year. Woodson was going to be the guy. Woodson going into the season only needed 402 points to surpass the Indiana mark of Don Schlunt and then Michael Thompson's mark at Minnesota for Big Ten all-time career scoring leader. And he would have easily done it because his first 2 seasons at IU scored 500 points, which had only been done one other time. So there's a lot of going into that season. You got Ray Tolbert arriving on campus. You got Landon Turner. It could be a magical season. And then if you've been around, if you were there that year, if you know anything about it, the stars are supposed to align because the NCAA tournament Final Four was in Indianapolis. Think about Woodson being in that moment. He's a senior from Indianapolis. This could be the icing on the cake for his career. And then the wheels start falling off because of injuries. Randy Whitman has a stretch fracture in his foot. Phil Eisenbarger, who was a off-the-bench player, got hurt. Ted Kitchell gets hurt. But then we have the injury to Woodson. He has a herniated disc in his back, and the big question that he was faced with was, does he have surgery? And without him on the floor, things just kind of fell apart and were inconsistent because you don't have that routine scoring. Now, thankfully, the ship was righted in some way because of Isaiah Thomas. And there's a lot of evidence, if you watch game film from that time when Woodson was gone, that, Knight gave the keys to Thomas and said, run it, just go. And you see that a lot in 81, but there are hints of that in 79, 80 as well. But this is what, if you are a younger person and I wasn't around. I was born in 83, so I'm not claiming to be someone who watched religiously that time period, but I've done my research and I've watched a ton of games from that era. You have to understand what's going to happen here, because I use 7-5 in the Big Ten with 6 games to go. And Woodson is returning on a road game at Iowa. And the big question going into this game is, one, does Woodson have the wind and the conditioning to play in a game when he hasn't played in 15 games at this point? And two, is he going to be able to sustain any kind of consistency? And they win. He scores 18 points. And what happens is IU reels off 6 straight victories. He scores 18 points against Iowa. He has 24 against Minnesota, 24 against Michigan State. And they cap off a victory against Clark Kellogg in Ohio State. Kellogg was a freshman, but he was a key player that year, in a close one. And they win the Big Ten by winning the last 6 games. And this is the amazing thing, and I highlight this every single time it's brought up. Mike Woodson plays 6 Big Ten games that season and wins the Big Ten MVP. Yeah. So you would never see that today, ever. And that just tells you, and you think about it, what its most valuable player to their team. It just embodies what Woodson's importance was to that season when it came down to those 6 games were the difference between a Big Ten championship or an NIT or whatever. And his return and the solid play that you have of guys around you made the difference here. Indiana's a 2 seed, by the way. One other ball here. This is a 79-80 Big Ten championship signed basketball. I love this one because this one I found for $1 at a garage sale. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, this one, it's got Knight, it's got Isaiah, Ray Tolbert. I don't know if he says Michael or Mike on this one. Yep, it says Michael Woodson still, which I think is so cool because, when you get older, your signature changes so much. But Indiana's a 2 seed and they go into the Big Ten or go into the NCAA tournament. And, from everything I've talked to from people who are there, they just couldn't sustain it from an energy standpoint. Woodson had given everything he had into those 6 Big Ten games, and it just wasn't meant to be. And unfortunately, to put a knife in the wound, of course, they lose to Purdue in the NCAA tournament in the year that it's in your home state. So I to me, when you think about players in history that are tremendous players that didn't win championships, you have Calbert Chaney, you have Walt Bellamy, and I will never stop mentioning the older players that were significant. I don't like those guys to be lost in time, but Woodson's definitely up there because, he's top 5 all time in scoring. He's only one of 5 guys to score more than 2,000 points. And unfortunately, he's in that category of probably him and Chaney, the 2 best players ever to never win a Big Ten or never win a national title. And but again, for those guys who are the younger generations or the people that are not as familiar with Woodson and know that he played, you just need to understand how significant and how great of a player he was. He's not a guy that's just like a role player who was a great leader. He was a great player and did amazing things during his 4 years.
It was incredible watching him. I would have been an 8th grader when he graduated from college in 80. And watching those games on Channel 4 and just the silky smooth jump shot. And it's easy to see where the fan base just falls in love in shooters. You had Whitman come through. You had Woodson. You just had Kitchell. You had a string of players that just come through. Ray Tolbert was fun to watch in 81. And so, you go from 70, 75, 76, and then you do have some turnover in those years. As Knight caught a lot of grief for that back then. Now look at the transfer portal and how things are going. But Woodson was just a pure joy to watch shoot the basketball and to score the basketball. And I'm going to have to go back and watch some film just to refresh my memory of specifics. I appreciate the stories that you're telling and that, because it just does bring back to life those things that I was able to watch as a youngster, and many of us did not. And that Purdue team went on to the Final Four, I believe, right? And eventually, maybe did they? I think they had to vacate that trip to the Final Four for some reason, but that's how close Indiana might have been to that Final Four. And then obviously 81, it follows that year with the championship.
Yep.
So you also have a jersey, but you can't show that right now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
or
I have.
Because
I
where
have,
it's low, it's on your wall somewhere, right?
Yeah. So I was again at one of the sales. There was a Woodson jersey, so I have that hanging in my basement. So it's framed up. It's just one of those things that I look at. I have a life. I teach. I have a family, so I'm not down here 24/7. But when I come down here, I always like to look at it, and I kind of think about the significance of the season. So with him back, it's one of those guys that you like so many of these great players in history. You don't want to let that significance and that importance go unnoticed, for sure. So.
Right, and that's part of Coach Woodson's return. What has made this so special for the fan base is that it's connecting old and new, and it's bringing that back. And I just am corrected because I didn't necessarily want an IU guy just because an IU guy. I think we got the right IU guy. I think that's different, because you don't want an IU guy to come back, and I think Coach Woodson's the right IU guy to bridge that gap just with his attitude and his connection. So. With your collection of IU basketball, is there any one player that you have the most items from, or is there a couple players that are your favorites that you try to get ticket stubs of big games? And I know I appreciate my Quinn Buckner program when he was on the cover that you were able to secure for me.
Sure.
But what do you go by players, or is it just a deal? You grab something, but who do you have the most of, and who are your favorite players to try to collect?
I have a lot of Chaney stuff. I don't have a Chaney jersey. Anything Chaney. I mean, him and Eric Anderson were like my guys, my heroes as a kid. And I've told this story about meeting Anderson before, but when it comes to like tickets, I like to find those kind of situations. I try to find like significant games, top scoring games. Like I have Jimmy Rails tickets from both of his 56-point games. I don't have a ticket from Woodson's game in '79. I'd love to find one of those. But I have the ticket from Chaney breaking the Big Ten scoring record. I have a great shot of him shooting it where you see the sign that says Chaney needs one, which I know Jared is still trying to track down. I have that signed, and a great color photo of that. I have a ticket from, which is ironically very hard to find, a ticket from Bob Knight's Tossing the Chair. You would think you'd be able to find it. It was a packed house in the mid-'80s, but they lost the game, so maybe that was it. But it's a very significant ticket. I mean, everybody wants to find the Watt Shot ticket and the Boozer Block ticket against Duke, but I like to find significant tickets from significant games. But I collect guys that I remember seeing. I got a lot of Moye stuff. Guys that I remember in college, guys that I remember seeing as a kid, those kinds of things. But I like to find the old stuff too. One of my prized possessions is a basketball sign that by the 59-60 team, which is one of the greatest teams ever to play at IU that really nobody knows about. And there's been great articles written about them. There was a great article, I can't remember if it was Rivals or Peak. Somebody did a great, like an oral history about the 59-60 team. I love that. It's one of my favorite items. It's beautiful. The signatures are bold and great. But those kinds of things, but really anything. I don't turn things down. I don't, prioritize certain things. I guess I do prioritize some stuff, and I don't collect everything, but I try to find things that have historical significance and things that I've never seen before, because I'm always very, very interested and just wowed by things that I've never seen before, that I didn't think that were out there. And those are the kinds of things that I just my heart goes nuts for. And I know that sometimes people think collectors are crazy, but I always tell people the reason I do this is because I like to preserve the history of the program. I like to preserve the history of the university and the sports. And I don't want to see things that are important get constantly recycled or constantly resold over and over again and not get in the hands of people that are true IU fans. And that's some people disagree with that. That's fine. But that's the way I put it is, and I like to see things remain preserved, and I like to see things showcased. And so, maybe someday, as I've talked about it, maybe something can happen on the campus with the space that's available at Hinkey and Cook. We can do things there. That would be fantastic, and continue to expose more and more generations to the history of the program and the programs in general.
That's Chris, why I just find you an amazing person too, because you just give a lot to the university, to the memory of the university, to people you meet. You have a great family. It's just really good. I do have to ask, do you have programs, ticket stubs from the 81 games, the regional games at Assembly Hall?
I do have those.
Sweet.
I think about that. I mean, that's how crazy it is. Assembly Hall is a host site. I think they were a host site in 77. They've been a host 3 different times before this past season. 81, I think it might have been 77 and 78. They were the regional hosts. And I know obviously this past year, because of the circumstance, because of the COVID situation. But yeah, I do have that one. That's a pretty cool one to think that, you're playing in front of your home crowd largely in that season. So yeah.
Do you have any of the national championship tickets?
I have everything from 87 in terms of the tournament, 81. I have every ticket from the 76 season, all 32 except 2 tickets. So I need at Northwestern and at Northwestern and at Wisconsin. And I want to showcase all 32 of those. That's been very difficult, but I like that. I have a program from 53, which is extremely rare. I've seen one program from 1940, extremely, really hard to find. And I had 2 tickets from the game at Butler that we played in 1940, where we beat Duquesne, to send us to play Kansas in Kansas City. So the only 2 I've ever seen of those. Never seen a final ticket from 1940. You get back in there, especially at the time when the NCAA is not in charge of the tournament, because there was a time where it was called the Tournament of Champions, not the NCAA tournament, for the first few years, 38, 39, and 40. It was not, I believe in maybe 41, it wasn't run by the NCAA tournament. It was run by an outside organization. But yeah, though, anything like along those lines, I'd love to find a 40 program that's not going to cost me thousands of dollars. But I mean, it would probably be a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 item if you find one, because they're just so scarce. So.
Well, keep up the good work, and I hope someday that you can see some similar items in a museum or something on campus. I think that is just something that is much needed. We've talked about that a lot in person, and I support you. And my favorite Chris Williams story is he asked me to attend a basketball game with him Sunday, and all of a sudden I see him on his phone, and he's trying to make a deal for some memorabilia right when the game's going on, and he really went to work. He was going to work when there was a timeout, but he was still rooting and watching. But I was like, dude, what's going on? Oh, I'm looking. I forget what it was that
wheeling
day.
And dealing.
What was that?
I was wheeling and dealing.
Oh, yeah, you were.
That might have been the game. That was the last. That might have been the last. I think it was in 2020. I think that was right before everything. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was one of those games. So,
good
stories about Coach Woodson. Again, he's our coach, but he's a former player, and we're just really glad to have him in charge of the program. Okay, coming up in our third segment, we're going to answer your questions, including one in which we help a longtime listener pick the home game tickets he should reserve for this season. Stick around for us here on Assembly Call. You know, I've had some major home expenses with a foundation and a deck, and some other things. But if you ever come across, a Ross Hales jersey, I might be able to find, $5 or something to buy that actual game worn. I had some of his cleats. I've had some, he would get some extra gear, and I'd end up with a shirt or two that they had during that time. But no, I'm not the collector that you are, but I have a few pieces here, and I like it. So
yeah, those jerseys from the early '90s come up every once in a while, and I always look, but I haven't been able to find. I always wonder if they sold those the way they sold some of the other things, but I always look for that. I also look for his basketball jersey because
right.
That's
53.
That's 53. Him and Tom Geyer, the only guys that wore 53. Yep. So yeah.
I do like the some of the football jerseys you were able to get a hold of for me.
Yes.
So I got his number hanging up down here, but actual game worn. That's just good. I appreciate you coming on and sharing the stories. And it's just, I am so excited because it does seem like everyone's back together. And I was fortunate to grow up in the younger days when I was younger and see the 76 championship, then the 81, and then attend college in 87. I mean, that we're all wanting to win, I've been fortunate to witness that. And a lot of people who were born later don't have that. And I want it so bad for a lot of people, but it's a good job that you do in keeping that all alive and as a lot of universities do already.
Right. Well, my big thing is that I want people to know that there was basketball before Bob Knight. I'm not desensitizing that at all. I mean, heck, I grew up, my big teams, my wheelhouse was the 90-91 Big Ten title team, the Final Four team, that 93 team that was such a heartbreaker, and that 94 team that was really good. But, I constantly, and this is the whole point of why I have this account on Twitter, is I want people to know about George McGinnis, and I want people to know about Don Schlunt. I want people to know about Everett Dean as a player and as a coach, and Vern Huffman and Marv Huffman, and all these guys that are obscure names that you wouldn't know otherwise unless you read a book of history of IU basketball, because we do highlight the 76 team, rightfully so, but there's so many other teams. Like we got an email, Jared passed along this email about, somebody made a great point about the fact that the 67 Big Ten title team is so undervalued because they went from last to first. They were last, they were in the cellar, like a lot of the teams, Lou Watson's era, they finished dead last or in the bottom. And this team won the Big Ten title, and they went to the tournament. And it's one of those seasons that's kind of like overlooked. You had great players on that team, Butch Joyner, Vern Payne. And it's we've talked about doing a story about that, or like a podcast about that team, because it's one of those obscure seasons that, unless you look and see a list, 1967, I didn't know we won in basketball. I know we won in football and all that because the Rose Bowl team and all that. But it's there's some great storylines of teams. I mean, I'm looking right in front of me behind the camera is a big picture of the 57-58 Big Ten championship team that had Archie Dees on it and Peter Bremski and those guys. So there's so much more. And again, not to de-emphasize or downplay what Knight's accomplishments and his teams were, but there's a whole lot there in addition to those teams. So,
Chat Mob, you're doing a great job today. We got a couple great suggestions. I think Denny said, Chris, you ought to charge a fee for people to come in and go through your basement, and then you could use that money to go out and buy more stuff. I think, that would.
I was a buddy of mine who was kind of a mediator for the Big Ten Network and was getting people for that show that they did several years ago, the Big Ten Treasure Hunter. And I had no interest in doing it. I don't really need people. I mean, I bring friends down occasionally, but I'm very selective, and it's just the way I am. I'm a private person. I mean, if I really wanted everybody to see it, I'd do a live, hey, look, I don't need to do that. And that's just me. And I get, that's a good point, but that's a lot of people in my basement that I don't necessarily
But you do a good job on getting on podcasts and sharing the stories and telling the history and
I mean, that's again, that's the whole point. Like so many people during since the pandemic started, I've lost interest in a lot of things. I've lost the momentum to write stories and do that kind of thing. And I'm hopefully trying to get that back. But yeah, I mean, it's, so.
And then Jen had a good story. We should have done this in the off season about doing one of those watch parties, get a YouTube game of Coach Woodson's, and then do an assembly call post game analysis of Coach Woodson.
I have some great game film from either 7980 or 7879 that's been high def digitized. So that would be cool.
Yeah,
I would totally be up for that.
That would be cool to get what we do. We did a start time, everyone watch it starting at a time, and then we were going to go live right afterwards.
We did that last spring with some of the NCAA tournament games. I remember that kind of like that when we didn't have a tournament. Yep. And we rewatched some of those memorable games from that.
And just thinking out loud, we should get Finney and Tamar and some of the guys to be guests. And I don't know if they want to watch 2 hours of their coach playing basketball. They probably got other things they want to do, but show them a clip or something like that. That would be,
sure.
They're for the inside scoop with Tamar. Have Jared show video clips of Coach Woodson and have Tamar critique. That'd
be wild.
Really, really good. All right, let's do this segment here. You guys have a fall break coming up down there?
We just had ours last Thursday, Friday. So okay. IU had a 1 day fall break on Friday, and so Thursday, Friday was ours.
We're off the whole week. Next
right
week.
Now. Oh, next week. Oh,
next week. Yeah.
We had fall break for a full week, I think 1 year, and it was amazing. And then people didn't like it. So of course you ruin a great thing like that. So
yeah, exactly. All right, here we go.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and it's segment 3, which is time for your questions. And my question is, do you have any Tim Priller jerseys or anything? Maybe we should get some Tim Priller love going in the basement of IUArtifacts. But if not, we'll just move on to the rest of our mailbag. And all questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join at assemblycall.com/community. And we got some really interesting questions. We'll start off with a question from Jack, who says, we share our season tickets with 2 other couples. This year we picked second each round. Who do you all think we should pick with our second pick, and what non-conference opponents are going to be the better games? Also, thanks for the shout out last week. Thanks, Jack. I probably need to call up the schedule.
Yeah, I have it pulled up too.
All right. So obviously if they have 3 couples, it's like a snake draft, probably first pick, second pick, third, fourth, and then back to him. So he's picking second in every round, or regardless, even if it's not a S-curve selection, he's probably picking. The second pick was.
Go ahead.
Obviously, Big Ten games will go 1, 2, 3, 4. I would imagine, right?
Right.
So what are the best 4 home Big Ten games?
Well, I think my guess is that if he's picking second, he's probably not going to get Purdue.
Right. That would go number 1.
I mean, to me, if I'm the second pick and I can't get Purdue, I'm going to the next game. Sunday game at noon or 3:30 on CBS, a weekend game. It's going to be packed. It's going to be a great environment. That would be the first one I would pick, would be the Michigan game on a weekend, because weekend games are so much more fun, because you're not coming down if it's a 9 o'clock tip, especially. And if you're not living in Bloomington, I mean, you're getting home after midnight, and that's awful for people who have to work during the week. So I would pick any strong weekend game. So my first suggestion would be that Michigan game, January 23rd.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. Obviously it's Purdue or Michigan, right? Do we play? I don't have the schedule pulled up. My
I got it.
computer skills with 8 tabs open is.
We got an Illinois game on Saturday.
On a February 5th
5th.
on a Saturday. That could creep in, but I think Michigan on a Sunday. I agree with you on that. I would say Illinois.
I would
no
really
one
go
else
for any weekend Big Ten game that's not going to be like Northwestern,
Right.
or heck, even Minnesota. There's a Sunday noon game. That's a good one, January 9th. If you don't have a chance to get either the Purdue or Michigan game, that's a possibility. But I would definitely go with any weekend Big Ten game that's on a weekend. Yeah, definitely. So that Michigan one, if he gets it, that's a great one.
So you got Michigan at home, Purdue at home, Michigan at home, Illinois at home, and Ohio State at home, correct? Those would be the top 4.
Yeah.
Ohio State's on Monday, I think early January.
Thursday. It's a Thursday, and it's at 7:00 too, so that's very feasible.
Yeah, so like you said, travel, depending on your travel schedule, like that knocks me out. Any 7:00 games on a weeknight pretty much knocks me out because of.
Does it say where Jack lives?
Because that obviously he did not say. The non-conference game, the number 1 non-conference game has to be St. John's. That's the best home non-conference game. The Marshall one would be interesting. Just they haven't been bad in the past.
Right.
I don't know any other. The other two
here's
big
the other
games are
thing.
on the road, right? Syracuse and Notre Dame are away.
I would go with the first game. And here's why, because there's going to be so much momentum. And for me, as a guy who's a big collector, and I don't know if Jack's going to think about it the same way I would, but I want the ticket, and I want the ticket from that first game from the start of his career. I think that's significant to me. So I would the Marshall game or the Eastern Michigan game, and I'm kind of leaning toward the Eastern Michigan game because it's going to be the first game of the season. The anticipation is going to be so high, and there's going to be so much, anticipation for the first game, considering we haven't been in Assembly Hall for well over a year. So that's where I would go if I couldn't get Marshall, and hopefully he can kind of get that one.
Yep. So there you go, Jack. That's some quick thinking for us.
Good question.
Really good question. Ari said, in light of the Michigan State football turning it around in 1 year, does it bring home the point that it should not take 4 years to start winning, and continually expecting a coach like Archie Miller to win eventually is more hope than reality? Every situation is different, but it seems unless you inherit something like Crean did, most coaches at least show a pulse in the second year. In retrospect, losing 12 of 13 in his second year maybe should have told us Archie was not the guy. I think it depends a lot on circumstances. I believe it's somewhere between 3 to 5 years when you can get a majority of your guys in. I think the transfer portal now helps people turn stuff around earlier. If the transfer portal had been here when Crean moved in, he might have been able to turn it around quicker. Archie was stuck with not stuck, but he had absolutely zero roster flexibility when he came in. So those things are going to push that time period back a year or two. But yeah, I think every new coach has its issues, and that is a concern. That everything's going well for Coach Woodson, but everything's going to be his first, and so I do think that you do see teams like Michigan State was bad for a couple years in football, and now they're in the top 10. They haven't played anybody of note, Miami, Florida being the best, but it does give hope. And I think more so than Michigan State football, the ability to get guys in that you need, the Miller Kops, those guys make it easier to believe that Indiana is going to compete a lot more. Your thoughts on Ari's question?
I think it's a good question. I mean, you could argue that there's similarities, but it could also be apples to oranges when you're talking football to basketball. I really do think that a lack of crowd last year played a big role in a lot of these teams, including Indiana's in some cases, whether you want to talk about our success or failures on the field, whatever. But I don't know. I think we all would like to see a situation with Woodson where it's like Knight, where you win 21 games your first season, you go to the NIT. Obviously, we would be in the NCAA tournament. And then we're in a Final Four our second year. I mean, that would be tremendous. I think that it's one of those things where, are we going to have the patience level if we only win 21 games this year and we're not like a 27 victory team? And I think a lot of it is reflected in the schedule. You look at the schedule and, your KenPom ratings for a lot of these guys are in the low 200s and high 300s. That's there for a reason, because I'm not blaming him for it. I mean, Crean did the same thing in his seasons where he wanted to get the W's where he can to offset the fact that you weren't going to win some games in the Big Ten. So I'm not discounting that, but I think it will be interesting to see, and I think that's the hope, is that we're going to win immediately. But I don't know if it's going to be something where it just turns on a dime, really, because of the attitude of the players and the confidence of the players to play more freely. I think that's going to be a big indication of the success early on, is if these players play tight in an offense that they don't understand how to play, and a defense that's too damn confusing to run. I don't know. So that's going to be the question to answer. But I think it's a possibility that it could be a pretty instantaneous success.
Yeah, I definitely think this is an NCAA team. I would be surprised if it's not. And from there, everything else is, icing on the cake from my point of view. Jeff, I think this probably is Coach Marlowe said, if not, I apologize, but kind of downtime as the first game is still about 3.5 weeks away. If you could visit a practice, what type of drills, concepts, styles would interest you as a coach? Throw that to you, Chris, and then I'll follow up with my answers. If you went to practice, what would you like to watch?
Well, considering I am a coach now of a fourth grade league here in Bloomington at Twin Lakes, and I'm very proud of that. I have my own whistle and everything. Nice. I want to see how the defense. I want to see the defensive schemes that they're running, because Woodson's preached about the fact that he wants Indiana defense to be back to an Indiana defense. I assume it's traditional man-to-man. That's our assumption. Is I just want to see the defense being able to be working to where it's actually going to run efficiently, and it's not going to be so much on the help side all the time. And it's so much. And again, I don't know all the language like you would on this, so you can correct me, but I don't want to see us to where we're constantly catching up to a guy who's wide open in the corner to hit a wide open three, and the guy's shooting already 41% from the 3-point line. So I would like to sit down and see how the defensive scheme works to where we're not getting in that position where we're constantly frantically hoping that the wide open guy shooting the three is going to miss the ball and then we can rebound. That's, to me, the big thing.
So I will go that way too, because I'm a defensive guy. I want to see and what I would say to that is your rotations. How does he do what we call the shell drill, the 4-on-4 drills, the defensive drills? How does he set his ball pressure? Is it going to go line? What kind of things is he going to do there? And then what are the rotations? I think you're going to see a lot of pro rotations where they what we call Xing out on the backside, where one player goes and helps and the other guy just leaves and picks up another man. That's not a switch necessarily, but it's just a heavy rotation. And the game's such a dribble game right now that you got to help. And then if you help, you're going to give open shots. But what you're talking about is, do you cover out faster? Do you cover out with more intensity? What I saw in the Bahamas, Chris, is that there's more intense help and there's more intense helping the helper with closeouts and rotation. So I would like to see that. On the offensive side, I would just like to see the concepts of transition basketball, what he's doing to emphasize getting that ball out, running the post to the rim. Trace Jackson Davis at Media Day said they're doing a lot of running, which is just good for me for two reasons. One, you play basketball better when you're in shape. And two, if he's emphasizing running, you've got to, in order to play transition and up-tempo ball, you got to be in shape. And so, maybe that's some keys there. But those are some things, Jeff, that I would like to see. I also will add to that how they're going to guard ball screens. And there's 8 or 9, 10 different ways to guard ball screens. Some coach want to have options of all of them. Some coach just say 1 or 2 coverages. It'll be interesting to see how he covers the general way he covers ball screens. The last question here is from Jerry. If you were coaching this team's full court defense, would you set the goal to be A, disrupt the offense, B, force turnovers, That's A or B. And then also, would you A, pick up man-to-man or run a structured press, what we call a zone press, a diamond press, or a 1-1-2-1? Then the third question, we'll go back over these. A lot of questions here from Jerry. If you pick a structured press, where do you position Thompson and Kopp? Fire away. You want me to repeat the first one?
No.
Do you want a pressure? Would you pick pressure to disrupt the offense, meaning make the offense slow down their entries and take some time off the clock? Or would you want to press to try to get turnovers to go score? What would be your main
I would want to force turnovers to try to score in transition. That would be my goal. And I really don't know what else to say about it because I am not a coach. And I understand what a 1-2-1-1 is, but I would think that the goal would to be using the offensive mistakes to create your own offense in transition. So that's what I would choose.
So I'm going to go the other way. I believe in college basketball, the best thing you can do is take time off the clock. And when they picked up full pressure,
you must be a Wisconsin fan then.
Yeah, full court pressure. That offensive point guard needs to take 4 or 5 seconds to get the ball across the court. That the shot clock's down to 26. And anytime you can slow that up, and then you force them, if you can force a team into isolations late, a lot of late isolations. And then you have a way of guarding those late isolations. I think that's a chance to get the field goal percentage down. I think the days, for me at least, the days of college, you can get away with this in high school, of denying and pressing and trapping in a structured press and getting turnovers. You don't see many teams doing that anymore. West Virginia did a little bit of that because it's so skilled dribbling the ball and passing the ball that good players can just eat that up. And then you do two things, Chris. You foul and you get tired. And maybe that's why they're running too. They want to put pressure. I don't mind pressure, but I don't like giving up, scores of 98, 95 to get up and down the floor. I know Patino had that a little bit earlier in his Kentucky career, but you just don't see a lot of teams. Underwood went from a lot of pressure defense in passing lane steals, and he was giving up layup after layup after layup. Now they got Kofi, who could, block shots, but he also went to a little more. He actually went to the NBA and got some NBA concepts to shut off the drives because it's such a drive guard-oriented game. I think if you try to trap in those structured things that Jerry was asking, you're asking for, as Jeff said, the Paul Westhead system. And that's personally just, not something that I do. I do think in different levels of basketball, that is a great choice because then if you're better talented and you're more deep, but everything's a little more equal in the college game. So, Jerry, I hope that answered your question. We had a little difference of opinion on the first part, and I like man-to-man pressure with some run and jump as opposed to the diamond presses or that for the college level. So, there you go.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next week, or if something breaks, maybe sooner. Until then.
Take it from me, Max Bielfeldt. Keep your calves flexed, your elbows in, and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
You might get beat today, but each day you got to get better.
Thanks, Coach Woodson. Always good pieces of advice.
I totally forgot.
So looking forward.
It's not going to be Archie at the end. I was so refreshing. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it is. Every year you always have some hope, but this is feels different for some reason. Well, not for some reason, for reasons that we've mentioned. But thanks for coming on, Chris. It's always good.
I enjoyed it.
Talk to you. I enjoy the time I need to come down and just take you and your wife out for dinner and send your kids to your parents, and we go out for a dinner and just spend some time.
That'd be fun. I would enjoy that.
So
I would enjoy that. Yeah.
Good deal. Thanks to the chat mob. Very good. Sorry, Coach Marlowe, about the ball pressure trapping press. I know you like that.
Yeah, I was just kind of waiting. I was like, all right, is he going to take that first? Is he going to take that first? Because, it's funny. I asked my brother, and I said, all right, can you give me some ideas for fourth graders? He sent me like a 6-page document of all these drills to do. And he talked about the shell drill, like the ball movement and I think it's just all about like the defensive shifting, correct? It's like they just shift around. Yeah. So, and the guy I coach with, and we looked at this thing and we're just looking at each other going like, all right, we're going to work on down screens and like pop outs. And then we're going to work. And we talked about doing like a 4-and-1, just kind of like a motion, just do something like that. But with these kids that, their attention spans are like 5 seconds, I said, we're going to have like 3 set plays. We're going to have an inbounds play, and we're going to have like a drive and dish kind of thing. But if we can keep from picking up the dribble 50 feet from the basket, I think that's a success. So it'll be fun. So
those are the good old days of
oh my gosh,
where you really got to have patience.
We are where we are. This is on the west side. It's called Twin Lakes. They have a ton of leagues, and they had no coaches in my son's league. And this was like 3 days before practice, and I got an email. And I said, "Fine, I'll coach." I coach baseball. I'm on a board in town for a baseball league. And I was hoping to have a nice quiet off season. And then I told my wife, I said, I got on Amazon that night. I bought a clipboard with the half court and the full court. And I bought a whistle, and I said, all right, I'm going all in on this. I'm not going to half-ass it. I gotta commit to this. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. So
that's great. That's great.
So,
all right, everybody, have a good night. If you're down at the football game, we'll set up a tailgate early, about 7:30. We'll be good to go. We're just having coney dogs and desserts. Pretty simple tailgate, but we enjoy your company, so you're always welcome to that. And take care, be safe, and we'll see you next week.
See you, everybody.
Close. See you.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep, thank you.